let know who Pat, you not getting anything?
Just got it back.
Yeah,
There we
I had it on mute for a second.
go. Okay, got you now.
Okay. Pardon for the delay, we had some technical things, but good evening, and welcome to the Town of Milton Planning Board monthly meeting for April. Ms. Blanchard, would you please call the attendance of the board?
Mr. Marsicano?
Here.
Ms. Padula?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
You're muted, Pat. He's here.
Here.
Ms. Van
And
Denzen?
the background from her mic is very vague. Gotta have yours, but Tina's no.
Yeah, she's just adjusting.
Ms. Van Denzen?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Whittle?
John, whether you're on mute?
Sorry, here.
Chairman Barto?
Here. Okay, I just want to note that our engineer, Joel Bianchi, and Councilman William Carey are attending remotely, as is the Director of Planning and Codes, Bill Lewis. Both our Secretary, Tina Blanchard, and our Deputy Clerk, Amanda Zawada, are present with us here at the Community Center. We'll start this evening with a pledge to the flag. Ms. Stevens, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in terms of announcements from the chair, I don't have too many this evening. I'll note that the planning and zoning boards did have a remote super training. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I was unable to attend. Did anybody from the planning board attend that? No? Okay. So we're still working on some additional training opportunities so we can all get in our 4 hours of required training credits. So I know we've sent around a couple of links to some online sources, and supervisors have shared some stuff. But you should go ahead and see what you can do. I know next week I have 3 hours of training that I was able to get on from some of those links. But people should start working at that. You know, we've got the year to do it, but get it out of the way. And if you're having any trouble finding those, let me know, and we'll continue to send things your way as we see them. Following last month's board meeting, Bill Lewis and I met briefly with Mr. McClanahan and his team to discuss the idea of amending the community solar farm on Murray Road. His proposals fits our definition, but he will need to amend his site plan and obtain another variance for the project to proceed. You can see that we have this on our agenda this evening for the initial conceptual review. We have a couple of opportunities for the public to interface with us this evening, and I'd ask that if you are Zooming with us and want to make a public comment, please use the hand wave feature or the Q&A feature. And Amanda and Tina will be watching and alert us that there may be somebody out there with a question or a comment. We will not accept anonymous questions, so please submit your name with your question. If you have dialed in on the phone feature of Zoom and would like to make a comment, please call Bill Lewis at 518-376-1831. It's a cell number. He'll provide, give him your name and interested in making a comment, and he'll alert us to unmuting you and allowing you to comment. As with our usual comment protocol, we request that you announce yourself, state your address, and then present your comments within 3 minutes. Our first item, action on the agenda, is approval of the minutes from March 17th, 2021. Everybody should have a copy of those minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the March 17, 2021 planning board meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Stevens?
Chairman, I'll second
I'd
that.
second that.
Okay, I got Bernadette, she beat you to it, Pat.
Okay.
Now that we have a motion and a second, is there any discussion or changes to the minutes? Stevens?
On page 8, there's a duplication of the motion and the second.
Okay.
That's the only one I found.
Tina, could you just fix my name on the front page, the spelling?
Oh, is it incorrect? I'm sorry. Okay, I'll fix that for you.
Okay, so with those two changes, can I still have a reiteration of the motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make that motion.
And again, Linda, you for a second.
Yeah, a second.
Okay.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Pat?
I can't hear anyone other than you, John.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, he said yes.
Ms.
Can you
Van
speak
Duzen?
up, Tina, if you can?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Okay, the motions are approved. At this point, we'll open the meeting to comments from the public. Please note that we have a public hearing this evening as well, so if you have comments on that project, please wait until we have the hearing open so your remarks can be on the record. Again, I'd ask if you're Zooming with us, use the Q&A or hit the raise your hand feature. If you dialed in, call Bill Lewis's cell phone at 518-376-1831. He's zooming in, but he can let us know that somebody's out there that has a question.
Okay.
Anybody from the public wish to make a comment at this time?
I'm sorry, Bill Lewis just called me, he's having trouble with audio, so he wants us to call him if he wants to. He can't hear anything,
Okay,
so I'm just gonna, that's my phone.
okay. So Bill Lewis is having some trouble,
With
difficulties.
the,
Okay, here we are.
All right, can you hear me, Bill, if we do this? Okay. Okay, so we're now for any public comments. I haven't seen any public comment. There being none, we'll close the public comment period at 7:08 p.m. Okay, it's a little after 7:05 p.m., so we can start the public hearing for the active solar site plan review and special use permit application at 781 Route 29. This evening, we continue the review of the community solar project at 781 New York State Route 29 on property owned by Michael Darling. If you recall, we were reviewing that last month. Had to wait for some additional information and letters to be done. Everybody should have before them some new items that are on, that were delivered, and I'll just highlight the new ones. Correspondence from Saratoga County Planning Board dated March 19th, 2021, that there were no significant countywide or community impacts associated with the project. A revised full environmental assessment form dated March 29th, 2021. Correspondence dated March 31, 2021 from Lansing Engineering, responding to comments from our engineer. Correspondence from New York State DEC dated March 30th, 2021 regarding lead agency status and no objection to Milton lead agency. Correspondence from DOT dated April 8th, 2021, again regarding lead agency status and allowing the town of Milton Planning Board to take the agency. And then correspondence from our engineer dated April 20th, 2021, providing a review of this project to date. At this point, we can proceed with this seeker in advance of the scheduled public hearing. We have completed what is necessary for the Milton Planning Board to be lead agency for this project under seeker. Mr. Bianchi, do you have any comments for the board regarding the seeker or our lead agency status?
No, just to give the board some just updates, like indicated Chairman. The board is type 1 action. The board initiated a coordinated review at the last meeting. The project information was distributed to the involved agencies. And over the last 3 days, we received replies only from 2 agencies, that being DEC and the board's convenience, we did complete a draft of the part 2 of the EAF, which identifies potential project impacts. From our perspective, there were some potential impacts that are highlighted in the letter, but we found them to be small or no impacts occurring to specific categories within the part 2. Then we went on to prepare the draft part 3 for determination of significance, and then provided some more detailed findings of fact that would potentially support the board's issuance of a negative declaration if we choose to adopt it as part of this.
Okay. I-
And that's it. Any questions for the board on
Okay. So in accordance with the seeker, I will read the 18 questions in the full EAF Part 2 regarding the identification of potential impacts on the project. In the first area of the impact on land, there is noted that there will be impacts. The proposed action may involve construction on land where the depth of water table is less than 3 feet. But that's to be small or no or small impact. The proposed action may involve construction on slopes greater than 15%. That's a small or no impact. The proposed action may involve construction on land where bedrock is exposed or generally within 5 feet of existing ground surface. Again, a no or small impact. The proposed action may involve the excavation and removal of more than 1,000 tons of natural material. No or small impact. The proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than 1 year on multiple phases. That's a no or small impact. The proposed action may result in increased erosion, whether from physical disturbances or vegetation removal. That's a no or small impact. And the proposed action is or may be located within the coastal erosion area. That's a no for sure. On to impacts on geological features. The proposed action may result in modification or destruction or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site. That's a no. Impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes. That was a yes. So the sub-questions are, the proposed action may create a new water body. That's a no. The proposed action may result in an increase or decrease of over 10% or more than a 10-acre increase or decrease in the surface area of any body of water. That was a no. The proposed action may involve dredging more than 100 cubic yards of material from a wetland. That was a no. The proposed action may involve construction within or adjoining a freshwater wetland or tidal wetland. That was a no or small impact. The proposed action may create turbidity in a water body either from upland erosion, runoff, or disturbing bottom sediments. That was a no or small impact. The proposed action may include connection of one or more intakes for withdrawal of water from the surface water body. That's a no. The proposed action may include construction of one or more outfalls for discharge of wastewater. That's a no. The proposed action may cause soil erosion or otherwise create a source of stormwater discharge that may lead to siltation or other degradation in receiving water bodies. That's a no or small impact. Proposed action may affect the water quality of any water bodies within downstream of the site of the proposed project. That's a no. Proposed action may involve the application of pesticides or herbicides in and around any water body. That's a no. Proposed action may require construction of new or expansion of existing wastewater treatment facilities. That is a no. Question 4, the impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional uses of groundwater and may have a potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. The answer is no. Impacts on flooding. Question 5, the proposed action may result in development of land subject to flooding. The answer is a no. Question 6, impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. The answer is no. Impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in the loss of flora or fauna. The answer is no. Question 8, impact on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources. The answer is no. Impacts on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action may be obviously different from or in sharp contrast to the current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. The answer is no. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. The proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological site. The answer is no. impacts on open spaces and recreation. Proposed action may result in the loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resource as designated by an adopted municipal open space plan. The answer is no. 12, impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located or adjacent to a critical environmental area. The answer is no. 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. The answer is no. Impact on energy. The proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. The answer is no. Impact on noise, odor, or light. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. The answer is no. 16, impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing resources of contamination. The answer is no. 17, consistency with community plans. The proposed action is not consistent with an adopted land use plan. The answer is no. And 18, the consistency with community character. The proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character, and the answer is no. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the evaluation of impacts? Okay, and the next category is our determination of significance. And as Joel pointed out, I think most of you should have received Joel's documentation on this. He has documented this as a type 1 action. He has also suggested, and I would concur, that this project will result in no significant adverse impacts on the environment, and therefore an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. Accordingly, this negative declaration will be issued if you approve it. And then he's documented, I won't read all of this, there's several comments, but he just pretty much went through the impact assessment that we had done and documented all of that. Pretty much the same way we've done it, and also indicated additional factors that would be considered in this. So with that, I will entertain a motion that as lead agency, the Town of Milton Planning Board has determined that the proposed action to construct a community solar project at 781 Route 29 will result in no significant adverse impacts on the environment, and therefore an environmental impact statement will not be prepared, and the chair is authorized to sign the determination of significance and submit the notice of determination of non-significance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second that, Chair.
Okay. Comments? Is there any discussion at this time? Or have any questions on seeker or the determination of significance? Being none, poll the board to
Chairman, hold on 1 second, go beyond me. I just said something, on the part 3 with requiring your signature. I made 2 minor edits because I just caught them as I read them. I had the name of the action, I had the wrong address, so I changed it to 781 Route 29. And then I actually had a error of this, I signed it and emailed it to Tina, so she had that. But you were certainly free to make those handwritten remarks. There was no other changes. I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Where do we make the changes that you did it as prepared?
It would be on the part, on the second page of the part 3, where it says, name of action, midway down.
Yeah, I see that, I got that.
So I changed the address, and then where it says signature of preparer, I actually signed it and gave it there.
That's fine.
Tina has it in her, she has it in her inbox if you want to sign that.
I'll have her print that out and I'll sign that form if you make those changes.
Okay. Thank you, I apologize.
Okay, pull the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Dienza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. Okay, having duly completed our super requirements, Mr. Dell, I think you're going to do a presentation, bring us up to speed. Okay.
Good evening, my name is Jason Dell. I'm an engineer with Lansing Engineering here on behalf of the applicant. I'm sorry?
More to the next, yeah.
Yeah, you can take it out of there and hold it closer if it's easier for you to do that.
Okay. Can you
It's
hear
got to be
me?
real close, yeah.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, for the 781 Route 29 solar farm, the project site is approximately 65.93 acre parcel located at 781 Route 29. The parcel is located approximately 1,500 feet west of the intersection of Route 29 and Rock City Road. The parcel extends across both the R2 zone and the H1 zone. The project site and the solar farm is proposed only for the portion of the property on the R2 zone in which solar farms are allowed. So for the project, the applicant is proposing to construct an approximate 4.35 megawatt solar facility. The array will consist of approximately 9,663 panels and associated access road and equipment that will be constructed across approximately 14.1 acres of the overall site. All of the solar panel equipment is proposed at a minimum setback of 100 feet from all adjacent property lines as required by code. Access into the facility will be via one access drive off of Route 29. That will be a 20-foot access road that will extend into the facility and branch off to the north and to the east, which they'll both terminate at hammerhead turnarounds in accordance with fire code. The facility will be fenced in with a slide gate at the entrance that will be equipped with a Knox box for emergency services. So as Joel indicated, we have addressed all comments that they have issued thus far. So we are here this evening for the public hearing.
Oh, sorry,
Nobody can hear if he's.
sorry.
So we're here this evening for the public hearing to answer any questions that you folks may have, and with the hope of the site plan and the special use permit being approved for the project.
All right, Frank, you got anything you want to add, or we're good?
No, did you
Okay, in that case, we will open the public hearing at 7:23 p.m. Again, I'd ask if anybody has a comment before the board, please state your name and address for the record. Does anybody from the public have a comment they wish to make on this project? We have 7 attendees. Anybody seeing any hand waving or Q&A? I'm not seeing anything.
No,
Any of the attendees want to make a comment? Okay? No? Any of the board want to make a comment on the record while the hearing's still open? Okay, there being no public comment, I need a motion to close the active solar public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
And a second.
I'll second it.
John Whittle. And pull the board to close the hearing at 7:24 p.m.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Denza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Mr. Whittle, John, you're muted.
Yes.
Chairman
Sorry, I
Bartlett?
didn't hear.
That's okay. Yeah, she's trying to get closer to the microphone.
Still can't hear either.
They can't hear you, Tina.
I don't know too, if I put my microphone on this, they can hear me, but then it's going to echo.
Okay.
So I'll try to speak louder.
Okay. Sorry, we also got
Technical difficulties.
some noise coming from the utility.
Control room.
Okay. The control room. I don't know what it is. Something's out of control. Okay, so with that, does anybody have any concerns with moving forward on approving the project? And I presented you all, and Tina, did you make a copy for Frank that we can give him of this?
The draft
Yes, the resolution, yeah, I have a copy right here, Frank.
If you got one or two, you can Frank or Will. It's a very long resolution, I'm not going to read
Mr.
the.
Chairman, can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
I didn't hear from our engineer or read in his write-up whether he had a chance to review the decommissioning plan and whether it's in line with what he was thinking as far as...
He has, and he and Jim Craig and I exchanged. We have one change in the decommissioning pricing figure. So if you want to take a look at that, Frank. Joel, do you want to explain what was done with that figure?
Sure. So what we did is we reviewed the decommissioning plan, both from a procedural aspect and also the monetary value of it, to make sure it conformed with the town's code with respect to that, for establishing the security. We looked at it and we found it to be in line with prior solar projects in the town, and also compared against other solar projects in other jurisdictions. And they're following that pattern, I guess you might say. We do know that we've had feedback, at least informally, from people in town that value is low. But what I did point out in our correspondence this afternoon is that value also takes into account to the salvage value of a lot of the bits and pieces that make up the solar system. The copper, the panels, the metal, and whatnot. So that's why that value is what it is. Again, I want to emphasize follow past practices. The value is appropriate based on how they calculated it. So if the board has any questions on that, certainly be able to answer those. The form of that security, we doesn't really speak to that. I know Jim Craig had said they had them, how that was done, but I would leave that to the new council and board, how that, what's the form of that security, not a bond, whether it's cash.
Mr. Craig, you got anything you want to add to that?
Mr. Chair, not really. My original question or concern about the decommissioning was, a little bit of information is a dangerous thing, and that's about what I had. So I wouldn't purport to be an expert on it. I thought the figure was low. I wanted Joel's opinion, because Joel is our expert. He did give me that opinion, so I'm fine with the 66.5 figure. Frank Cunningham had given me an email earlier today saying it was a $58,000 figure. And I want to just, again, Joel's input on that. Our last email, Mr. Chair, as you know, you were included on it, from Joel was that the figure would be 66.5.
That's what we...
And as far as the type, I've always wanted cash rather than a bond, because cash is cash, and you know where it is, and you can always know where to get it. Versus a bond, we're always worried about the rules and bond companies staying in business and developers staying in business. So cash on hand to me is always better than a contract for somebody to give us cash in the future.
Okay.
That's fine with us, that's what we've done in the past.
Yep, okay. Frank has indicated that the figure is fine and the cash is fine, and that's the way we'll do it. So I'm not going to read the entirety of this resolution, but it's basically that therefore be resolved that the applicant are approved for a site plan review and special use permit with specific conditions stated herein, and the following findings in accordance with the code and the comprehensive plan. And Jim has gone through and articulated compliance with public health and safety and general welfare of the town, the operations of the facility and its scale and impact, no sidewalks, applicable buildings and improvements. There's really no buildings, there's just the solar arrays. Traffic, there's access to the facility. We did have some things that the applicant had to provide getting through the Niagara Mohawk. It's a fee piece of land, correct? Fee, or it's an easement, the right of way that cuts through? Oh, I'm sorry, not in this property.
Last project.
It's a last one.
Project.
Yeah, sorry. But either way, there's no traffic being generated really as a result of this. Inadequate ingress and egress really is. There's plenty of parking for the few things that are going to park there. The landscaping's been addressed, life safety, sounds and lighting are being addressed, character and appearance of the buildings, nothing to do with the roof transition plan, and BMPs for streams and other natural features that are more than adequate stormwater pollution prevention plans. But the conditions, I will summarize that we have in here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 conditions that we outlined. One being the condition we just talked about, the decommissioning plan, and setting the fee at $66,500, and that the condition implies a cash thing, but there is an option with Frank McLennan has indicated that cash will be fine. A condition of the issuance of a certificate of completion or closeout of the project, that the applicant has voluntarily agreed to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes acceptable to the town of Milton, but in no event later than August 30th, 2021. As a condition of approval, the applicant voluntarily agrees to pay a public benefit to the town in the amount of $75,000, $37,500 within 10 days of this approval, $37,500 on or before November 1st, 2021. They will maintain continuing compliance with all laws, ordinance, rules, and regulations. Will comply with and accord in the applicable sections of the town code, all conditions and modifications approved by the planning board. And there are no other additional considerations unless the board would like to bring up any additional conditions at this time. If not, we'll do this kind of in 2 approvals. The application for a special use permit is hereby approved, subject to the findings and conditions stated, if any, and upon the applicant's compliance with the submission requirements and modifications of any stated herein. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Stevens. A second?
I'll second it.
John Little. Sorry. Any discussion? There being no discussion,
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Denza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, that was for the special use permit?
That was
Or the site plan?
Sorry, the special use permit first.
Right, special use permit. I agree with that. Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. And the second part of the resolution being the final site plan is hereby approved, subject to conditions, if any, as it relates to the special use permit. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question before we make that.
Can we get a second? Can we get a second first, or do you want to do that before? A second?
Sure, go ahead.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now any discussion or questions?
Sorry, sir. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to know if we wanted to put our normal review process on this particular one. We've been sticking with approximately a 5-year review on the special use permits.
So what are you suggesting, that we revisit this again in 5 years?
Right.
I mean, I don't know that there'd be anything that changes. I mean, we typically have been doing that where if a project was going to potentially change over a period of time.
Right.
I don't know.
I just like to be consistent if we do stuff, so I would just like something on the record as to why we're gonna go one way with one thing and another way with another, so I just like to make sure we fully have a conscious decision that we're not doing it on this one, because an applicant, 2 applicants down the road may have, hey, you didn't do it on that one when you did a special permit, so I just wanted to make sure we're doing it for the reason, because a solar farm generally doesn't change over time.
Yep.
So it's generally used for the exact same purpose, and then it has a life that terminates.
Yep.
And that's generally the way it goes.
Yeah. I I
So
mean,
it's different than others.
yeah, we don't always do it. I know we did it, for example, with the Stewarts in North Line Road, and in part that was because we had a 5-year delay on any sidewalks while we got to see things, and also the chance that something could change there. I just don't see that here, so I'm not sure we do that. I don't know, Jim, do you have a comment on that?
I guess the only comment I have is, you already made, seconded, and approved your special use permit. You're talking about site plan now, so, that resolution is already passed regarding revisiting this special use permit unless you want to, make a resolution to, cancel that prior resolution and reissue it. But to address your issue, I think your analogy is perfect. There's probably nothing that's going to change in 5 years on a solar special use permit, so I don't know if that's needed. Again, I don't sit on this board routinely, so I don't know what your past practice has been, but your analogy with the Stewarts makes sense, because we know that's the Route 50 corridor, transition corridor, so we know that's going to change, or hopefully, and we know that the issue of sidewalks is still sitting out there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
can I make one comment, please?
go ahead, Pat.
I believe the spirit of that, Mr. Whittle, is that it was contested by neighbors of the project in the previous issues. And I don't see that being contested in any way, shape, or form in this particular project. And I think that as we put that in as a provision, it was to address those concerns and to also be able to revisit those concerns if the project wasn't in compliance in a timely fashion. And my perspective on that is, if it was contested by neighboring property owners, this doesn't seem to be in any way. And I may be oversimplifying it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
John, you got anything more you want to add? Does anybody on the board have any feelings about this one way or the other?
I don't think a 5-year review for this one would really, because there's not going to be any changes. They're going to be there for years, and won't be any actual changes. So I don't see where it would be taking up the future board's time to review it for no changes.
Frank, did you want to say something?
I'll just say, we haven't had this, this is the third project through the board, we haven't had this. I will say it creates an issue for financing for us if we have some uncertainty on a project that's so expensive that we're not going to have all of a sudden not going to have a special use permit 5 years down the road.
So did you, John, and Pat hear that response?
Oh,
I
yeah.
did not say.
Okay, can you use the mic? I'm sorry.
No,
It's actually a good point. He's going to say it again. He's going to say it again.
So, Mr. Chairman and the board, we've had 3 projects. This is the 3rd project come through Milton. I think they've all been a success. One of the things that this creates, if we have a 5-year review, is some uncertainty in financing that we may not be able to continue on what is a rather large investment. So it creates a financing hurdle for us. The project's put in place, it doesn't move. There's, as you said, no opposition to it as the result of no comments tonight. So I'd ask if you consider that when you're looking at this issue. Thank you.
Does that help, John? Okay. So at this point, I guess we won't. Oh, go ahead.
I respect the fact that Mr. Whittle is looking at continuity in what we do, and I think that's a very respectful approach.
But everybody's comfortable with not including the 5-year review at this point? Getting a lot of head problem here. You okay, John?
Yes, I am. I just like us to make conscious decisions.
Yeah, nope, I fully agree.
Agreed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the site plan review. Would you hold the board, please?
Mr. Marsicano?
yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes?
Ms. Vandenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. And I can get you a copy of this. I don't know if Tina or Amanda want to come up. You have, I'll get you a signed copy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, keeping moving, and with the same applicant, If you recall, I mentioned earlier that at the end of the last meeting, Mr. McLennan came to us, and Bill Lewis and myself, and talked about the possibility of doing an expansion at the Murray Road Solar Farm, which is the one that I was previously commenting about the easement or the utility on that. No, that's not even this one. But either way, they're coming to us to look to expand that solar farm. That will require an amendment to their variance as well as an amendment to their site plan and special use permit. We have information that was brought to us from the previous project, so I'll just leave that there. And then the new information I will summarize. What we have is a site plan review application dated March 30th, 2021, special use permit application dated March 30th, 2021, an area variance application dated March 30th, 2021, project narrative for Murray Road Phase 2 Solar Farm dated April 7th, 2021, a full environmental assessment form, Part 1 dated April 7th, 2021, a list of adjoining property owners, correspondence from Eugene Hickok dated March 23rd, 2021 regarding a CESIR study. I'll let you guys explain that later. A New York Community Solar Facility Decommissioning Plan dated April 6th, 2021, which is amending from what you had as a decommissioning plan earlier. Yes, okay. A site lease agreement dated April 7th, 2021. Helene 144 M6 bifacial performance description of the solar panels, aerial plan dated April 7th, 2021, site plans dated April 7th, 2021, and comments from our engineer dated April 2021. Deal with the seeker next. This is a type 1 action under seeker, and we need to conduct a coordinated review requesting lead agency status. With that, I will entertain a motion that the Town of Milton Planning Board would like to request lead agency status for this project and direct our engineer, Joel Bianchi, to reach out to other potential involved agencies, including but not limited to the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals, the Saratoga County Planning Board, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, requesting their input and concurrence with our lead agency status. Motion. Remember that? Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Oops, I beat you to the punch, John, sorry. With that, would you please pull the board?
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Denza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
John? Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. Okay, Frank, Mr. McLennan, or Mr. Deli,
Thank you.
Okay.
Jason Dell, engineer with Lansing Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant for the Murray Road Phase 2 Solar Farm. The project site is located at 830 Murray Road. It will involve two parcels which total approximately 94.35 acres. The site is located about 750 feet west of the intersection of Route 29 and Murray Road. The parcels are both located within the R2 zone, which allows solar farms. The property, as you folks know, is currently occupied by Phase 1 of the project, as well as an active sand and gravel pit. And for this project, the applicant is looking to expand upon Phase 1 of that project. So for Phase 2, we will look to construct an additional approximately 4.6 megawatt solar facility. The array will consist of about 10,214 panels and associated access road and equipment. Again, the array is shown at a minimum of 100-foot setback from all property lines in accordance with the code. Access into Phase 2 of this project will be via an extension of the access road that was already installed for Phase 1 of the project. Again, with this project, it will also include a 7-foot-high chain link fence around the facility that will also include a slide gate with a Knox box for emergency services. Coordination with SHPO for this project has already been completed. We do have a sign-off from them for the project. As indicated before, the town of Milton zoning code specifies that solar energy equipment may cover no more than 10% of the property. So for phase 2 of the project, we will be seeking a variance from the zoning board, as we are at approximately 13% coverage combined for the 2 parcels in the 2 projects. So the project plans, as well as the SWIP, were submitted. They were reviewed by MJ Engineering. We have the comments from Joel. We take no exception to those comments. We feel they're mostly technical in nature, and we will be revising the project materials and resubmitting shortly. So I'm here tonight to introduce the project to you folks. We need to go before the zoning board. However, we're afraid to present the project to you folks and possibly schedule a public hearing for the project.
Bill Lewis, do you have any comments for the board at this time? Wait, Frank, did you have something you wanted to say? Please, hold up, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you, most of you have seen phase 1. I'd like to do a similar thing that we've done with the last 2 projects, is let's go take a look at this as a group, if that's okay. I think it's helpful for everybody to get a mental picture as they're going through the process. I think one of the most sensitive things here I've tried to address is optics for neighbors. There's 2 property owners here, Chad Waters and Jim Hogan. They're actually related. It's 2 sisters who live next to each other. I used to ski with Mr. Waters, so it was kind of fun. I haven't seen him in 20 years, so we got to meet again. But, so we're putting in a berm here as a hard break. I've moved the clearing back, I believe it's to the 100-foot line, so we're not clearing all the way to the edge of the property, even though we could. I actually went out with Mr. Waters this afternoon, put caution tape on there, so when we do a walk, you can kind of see the amount of trees, and this is a good time of the year to look. They're not going to be able to see this thing. And that was by design, so just like when we did the last one, you know, we want to bury these things, not impact anybody. So I want to make sure that you guys just understand the idea of that. So as we're looking at this, there's some grading we're doing here, but more importantly, it's just visuals for the neighbors and making sure that we all still stay friends. So that's all.
Okay, great, thank you. And what I'll do is probably do a doodle poll with the board and you and see if we want to work out. Would folks be interested in doing a site visit if we could work it out? I know I have a conflict this weekend, but we got 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Or even if it's light enough that we could do it in, after work evening situation.
Wait till snow season.
So I'll get a doodle poll together, I'll put it in Frank and Mr. Gallo. And we'll see what we
Thank you.
can work out. So I think that'd be good. That'd be very good. All right, Bill Lewis, do you have any comments for the board at this time? Okay, anybody got any questions of Bill? If not, I will turn to Mr. Bianchi. Do you have any comments that you'd like to share at this time?
Just quickly, we issued our comment letter yesterday. And because this is sort of a second phase, I think a lot of the heavy lifting is done first phase. But nonetheless, as you indicated, Chairman, this continues to be a type 1 action. The board has directed us to initiate a quarterly review, which we've identified agencies that are the same as they are previously. Again, the potential impacts are the same as the prior application, but I think we can work through those with the board like we did last time. We did know that the narrative and plans had a little bit of a discrepancy on the Relief that they are requesting from the ZBA because they are requesting an area variance from the ZBA. I believe it's 12.8%, the area that we get 15.5, 15.15. Just wanted to make sure whatever they're submitting to the ZBA is reflective of whatever the relief they're requesting. The balance of the comments are really minor in nature, again, because the heavy lifting is already done in the prior application. I don't see any challenges in this application moving forward.
Yes, we'll clarify the typo.
Okay.
With the ZBA as we move forward.
Yeah, if you could just keep Joel in the loop.
Certainly will.
Yeah, because he's correct, you want to make sure you got that right.
That is correct.
The one thing I did note, Chairman, was that the plans and the application to the ZBA matched 12.8%, the narrative indicated something different from what we found. Just wanted to make sure they're not making the application to the ZBA and then have to go back for another 1.5% of coverage.
That's correct. We'll get that squared away.
And is the ZBA meeting tomorrow night?
That's correct.
Yes.
So theoretically, when we meet next month, the ZBA will follow our meeting. Okay, I just want to close that in my head. Does the board have any questions on the project at this time? Go ahead, Jim.
Is this a whole new project or an extension of the previous one? I'm still confused there.
So it's the same parcel. That is a second interconnection. So that this project, our capacity is coming from Soderman Road. We're running underground and actually putting our poles up here so that they're out of everyone's way. So we're trying not to add any poles at the street. There's an existing pole on Soderman Road we're going to utilize, and I think we have one more just to get down into the ground. But the idea was no impact, try not to get any visual impact. But it's in National Grid's eyes, it's a second project. In the town's eyes, I think it's considered an expansion of the first project. Is that correct? Yes.
So what on that plot is existing and what is new?
This is all existing as you move, and this is all new.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see this far away, but there's a point.
I think there are different colors here, just wasn't sure which one. All right, thank you.
What's the two project megawatts difference? What's, first phase was how many megawatts, second phase how many megawatts?
First phase was 6.3 megawatts DC, 5 megawatts AC. This was 4.35. So 4.35 DC.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4.6.
4.6 megawatts DC. AC is 3.5, I believe.
All right, would the board have any objection to scheduling a public hearing for this in May? We obviously will probably keep that hearing open. We won't be able to approve this until we get the ZBA's input, but I'd rather get the public comment into us sooner than later, so that would even be advantageous to the ZBA. They too will be probably scheduling a public hearing in May for their decision, which would be the day after ours. And then we could come back in June and act on the project. Does that sound reasonable? Plus it gives the opportunity for the public to come to one or the other hearings that they can make. And if they can have comments, and if for some reason they comment on something that we need to pass off to the ZBA, we can do that. It just gives more opportunity. Okay, if you're good with that, then I will entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for the community solar project site plan and special use permit amendments for May 19th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m.
Make that motion, Chair.
Okay, Pat Collins, do I have a second?
I'll second Sharon.
Any discussion? If there are no discussion, would you please pull the board to me?
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Denza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Mr. Will?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. So 7:05, 2 nights in a row. Thank you.
It's actually-
Thank you.
Yeah. it's a-
Thank
it's a
you,
week.
and Mr. Craig, your step in for council is complete. You can stay with us and watch the fun, or if you want to sign off, I take it Bill Kennedy will be signing back on. Yes, he is. Okay.
I'll hang for a little bit.
Okay, so now, next project, the continuation of the site plan review application for Caterham Village Winter Circle. We have the continued review of the amended site plan review. If you recall, last month, we still needed to wait for the Saratoga County Planning Board referral to be completed. So for this evening, everyone should have before them the site plan review application dated 3/3/21, site plan amendment plat dated 3/3/21, the Saratoga County Board referral dated March 19th, 2021, indicating that there are no significant countywide or inter-community impacts. Last month, we also waived the requirement for a public hearing on this project. Mr. Hannibal, I think you will be presenting this evening?
I will.
I think we all seen it, but if you want to give a quick synopsis for everybody that have not heard.
Certainly, I'll be very brief. As I think we were ready to approve it last meeting, but we had to wait for the county. For any of the members of the public or the board that weren't here, we're looking for a site plan amendment to the Winter's Circle at Sarah.
You gotta hold the mic closer, maybe.
Can't get much closer.
It moves.
Is that better?
Is that better, Amanda?
Okay. We're doing a site plan amendment to increase the project density from 706 units to 782 units without changing the buildings. Essentially, we're changing various number of the 3-bedroom units into 2 1-bedroom units. We're actually decreasing the bedroom count as a result of this application. No change to the impervious surfaces, the number of buildings, number of parking spaces, etc. With that, I can address any questions if the board has them, but I think we were pretty good with this.
Does the board have any questions at this time? Okay. Anybody else have a question? I'm happy to entertain it. All right. Being no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed site plan amendment converting the approved 10-unit apartment buildings to a combination of 11 and 12-unit apartment buildings. That's the site plan in a nutshell. As noted, there is no increase in building coverage or impervious surfaces associated with the project. So the impacts are very limited. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Stevens? Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, Tina, please pull the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Denza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
John?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you for coming out for another enjoyable evening at the Milton Planning. All right, our next project is the Ostro Renasola special use permit and site plan review for a community solar project. If the board recalls, back in June of 2019, this project was initially represented to us, and we and our engineer had numerous questions regarding the project. This evening, Renasola is back before us with an application and a lot more information in the packet that they have. Are they here?
You're on Zoom, you need to have the panelists.
Okay, I will do that. So they're joining us remotely. Who are the two that I need to make?
Oh, Brian is raising his hand.
So I gotta make your.
Brad Davis, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Brad
Okay,
Davis is
hold on, I'm
the...
gonna try to upgrade them to panelists. Promote to a panelist. Is it just Brad Davis?
Is there a way that can be projected? Like, I had a board meeting where we had stuff projected. Is that
a possibility where?
Brian is raising his hand.
Brian is raising his hand.
Yeah, we're working on it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, it's a hot mess.
Okay, so I promoted Brian Bayer and Brad Davis, who are representing New Minnesota on this project. So who's going to lead off on the presentation?
Brad's muted.
How do I
Brad needs
unmute?
to unmute.
Brad, you got to unmute.
Unmute.
They should be able to unmute. Yep, there you go, Brad.
Turn him on.
Can you speak up? We're not picking you up on the microphone. Your microphone seems to be weak.
Actually, can you?
As you got closer to your computer, we could hear you better.
And John Miller as well.
And John Miller? Okay, promoted John Miller.
Brad Davis had great video, no audio.
Well, if you get closer to your computer, we hear it better. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, it's true.
That's manageable on my end, audio and video.
So go ahead, Brad.
But we did bring out, this project a lot of a couple of years ago, the extensive environmental work on the site. And we tried to get it in the parameters of the town work and full purpose. Even that everybody planning to receive our special use permit and some kind of review package. Just give you a few quick details. Located 6654 on a closed landfill. The owner of the property is Elena Oshko. She may even be building to such a contract. I'm not sure if she's in our property. The project size is 1.925 megawatts AC, or almost 2 megawatts DC. Total footprint being 9.86 acres of the site. Now, did receive Mr. Bianchi's feedback, formal letter yesterday, which we had a chance to address internally and for some of the comments. And of course, this being our first presentation in the planning board, not exactly sure what the protocol for this meeting should be. And with some of those comments here tonight, we'll have a discussion about them. If there's any questions for Courtney, we're consistent about the project. We won't going to address tonight. Give it back to you, Mr. Chair, and you can please advise and proceed.
Okay, so what we typically do is we'll first allow our Director of Planning to make any comments or have any questions that he has. Bill Lewis, do you have anything at this point that you want to say to the board? Okay, so with that, I will turn it next to Joel Bianchi, the engineer, so he can address two things for us very clearly, and he does some of that in his memo. The first is how he's feeling the seeker, the State Environmental Quality Review Act requirements would help us in determining what level of type of project this is and what we need for information in determining the impacts and its determination of significance, and then also for him to address some of the questions that he has raised in his memo, and how he wants we prefer to have you respond to them. So Joel, go ahead.
Sure. So we had reviewed this application previously, and it was, our focus previous, 2 years ago, wasn't really on the design aspects. It was really trying to sort through how this application would be classified under secret, because it did present some, I would say, unique circumstances. The state in 2018 had passed updated secret regs that afforded solar arrays, when they were installed under certain conditions, they afforded it some relief. And at the time, it was unclear if this project would fully benefit from that relief. And we posed questions, and I think the current submission attempts to clarify some things, but it did precipitate more questions. So the real thing was, to be very brief, is that if the solar array is installed within the confines of a landfill that has been closed by the state, that is considered a type 2 action, which in general terms is a condensed environmental review. The questions that remain as we reviewed and presented to the board was, it appears that there still may be some discrete activities outside the landfill, i.e. improvements to the existing access road. There's the running the electrical to the point of connection on the state highway. The things, and then they propose or suggest that they're going to have impacts to waters of the U.S., impacts to New York State adjacent areas to the wetlands. So when I look at those cumulative other activities, I still am challenged on how to classify this action. I think, if I may say, the board in the past, the other 3 or 4 solar projects we've done, they have been declared type 1 actions, but the board has taken a very, I think, proactive review where you initiate that type 1 review, and we usually close that out within 30 days, and then the next appearance, the board is usually ready to act on seeker, assuming there are no environmental factors to further discuss. So we can continue to debate or deliberate with the applicant on what type of action this is, or we could simply say, hey, we acknowledge there's some unknowns, and the board declares this a type 1 action, and we could theoretically initiate the coordinated review shortly, assuming they resolve some of the questions that we had on part 1. So I think that's where we are at seeking. We still can't advise the board what type of action this is because of the very unique circumstances. So before I go on to my technical comments, does the board have any questions? Legal counsel, I'm certainly open for his opinion, because this is a first of a kind in my career on how this works out.
So just so the board, we all feel we understand what he's saying here, you all grasp what Joel was outlining with respect to, do we classify this as a type 1 or a type 2 action, or do you have any questions on him on that? And I'm going to turn to Mr. Kinnery and see if he as counsel has any advice for us.
And John, it may be easy to frame this. If the board finds that this is a type 2 action, the seeker review is done.
Yes.
It's included this evening.
Yeah.
If it's a type 1 action, or even an unlisted action, there are other steps that the board would do as part of the review.
Mr. Kennery, do you have any counsel for us on this?
I do, Mr. Chairman. In the first instance, I agree with Mr. Bianchi with respect to his presentation on the regulations. Number 2, I think that it's important for the board to consider deference to the town designated engineer as it relates to calculations, as it relates specifically to impacts, and that's really what you're focused on here. I think from what I've seen of the history of this project and all the materials that have been submitted, certainly the applicant has, it seems to me, on its face, met the requirements as far as what the necessary submissions are required to be. I think there is an adequate submission at this point in time, and I think both parties, meaning the applicant and the board would recognize that there is some ambiguity. With that said, I think that the board could be guided by this, and I offer this as some respectful suggestions. First, I think as a general proposition, the board does not go wrong handling seeker in a conservative manner. Certainly that's consistent with the spirit and the intent of the law. And I don't know that the applicant is in any manner prejudiced, because in this instance, I believe they've already submitted the long form. Part two, and perhaps more significantly from a legal perspective, is simply this.
You're breaking up. We lost you.
And I think that this may be something that, this is what the board should consider legally that the applicant sometimes does not, and that is actions are required to be considered by the board as an entire set of activities on the site. And when I look at 9.86, I say, okay, that's close to 10 acres. When I think about the totality of the activities, I think everyone concedes here that while we've now confined the arrays to the area of the closed landfill, there are other improvements and other activities that will occur on this site that are off of the closed landfill as it's been defined by DEC. So I certainly think the board is well within its authority, and I think there's plenty of legal authority to support the board in considering the entire set of activities. And I think seeker mandates that that's required when the decision-making is being done at this stage. The board should consider these activities as a whole. And in that sense, as I say in conclusion, I think the conservative approach in all likelihood is for the board to consider the classification as a type 1 action at this stage. And the last piece of it is, obviously we all know seeker continues. If there's more information, the board can approach the seeker and is continually thinking about it along the way in the process. But I think it's an easier procedural process to do the type 1 classification in the first instance and then move on, rather than having to second guess the seeker determination the entire time through the process.
Hi, this is Brian Barron with the CNS Engineers representing Minnesota. I just wanted to add to this conversation, if I may, for just a couple seconds.
Go ahead.
You know, I totally understand the point of view from both Mr. Bianchi and Mr. Kinnery. The new addition of that type 2 action in the seeker regulation is written poorly. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, you know, as it relates to physical alteration, we have 25 acres to work with in order to be consistent with this regulation and not 10. And I know that 10 triggers a type 1 action typically, but if you look at the environmental impact statement in which, you know, the new seeker regulations were enacted upon, it clearly goes into this discussion of how, you know, that 10 acre threshold doesn't apply to this specific instance based on their review. Secondly, if you look at the seeker handbook, when you're looking at physical alteration, they want you to look at all things, including pertinent electrical and mechanical components such as ground pad, mounted transformers. They want you to look at security perimeter fencing. They want you to look at areas of temporary and permanent ground disturbance, including areas where you may see mowing activities. They want you to take a look at, all areas where, I lost my point there. Roadways, things of that nature that either new or improved roadways. And lastly, they say interconnection of the arrays to an offsite distribution facility power line would be covered under this type 2 if it meets the requirements under C. So all of those things that were mentioned, actually, if you dive into the handbook and into the BIS for the secret regulations really suggests that calling this type 2 is adequate. There's nothing, I think Mr. Bianchi's letter suggests, potential work in wetlands would be a trigger. There's nothing in here that, specifically references wetlands or waterways, et cetera. So either way, I just want to make sure that everybody understands why we put forth a package that recommended this as being type 2. It wasn't something that, we just tried to throw at you, so.
No, Brian, I recognize this, and the new secret regs, the way they're written is, does create an unusual circumstance where the relief granted basically says it needs to be, the way it's written verbatim is, those reliefs are granted to closed landfills where the solar array is installed on. As soon as you go outside that confine, yes, you have elements of a type 2 action, but as Attorney Carey said, you have to look at this in totality. And where we got this, there was actually the first review that we did, because of the uniqueness of this circumstance, we actually reached out to DEC's legal counsel who drafted those regulations, and his response was, you have to look at it in totality. It does not appear that it would fall into these new secret regulations. So you have a very unique circumstance here. And again, I say, if the board chooses to go forward and classify this as a type 1 action, perfect example is this evening. There was another solar farm that was classified as a type 1 action. Last month's meeting, there was no environmental concerns on that application. The board issued a neg deck this evening. So the board is, I think, very well educated on the aspects of the solar farms. We certainly continue to have a dialogue on this, and the board does not move forward this evening on this, but that is entirely up to the board. But I don't think we aren't trying to hold this application to a higher standard than we would otherwise. It just has some very unique components to it that makes it a little bit challenging to just say it's blanket type 2 action when we consider the totality of the action.
And we appreciate this conversation and appreciate, obviously this is the first time we've been in front of the board. I think we all now understand maybe perhaps a little bit where, each of us is coming from. So I appreciate that comment.
Sure.
So, any more discussion from the board? Or we got a little discussion from somebody there. All right. I think it'll be my recommendation as the chair that we be consistent in the way that we're approaching this, and that we ensure we cover the interest of the town as well as the legal requirements that we have under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. So my recommendation, if the board accepted, is that we would classify this as a type 1 project, do the coordinated review, get it going. We have the full environmental impact assessment. Joel can review that, get back any technical comments. He may have some verbally he wants to get into. We haven't gotten into his technical comments yet. But I guess at this point, if everyone's fine, I would entertain a motion that we classify this action as a type 1 and that we direct our engineer to conduct the coordinated review as required and reach out to all the interested parties. I think it's mostly the County Planning Board, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and OPRHP. Would that be correct, Joel? You're on mute, Joel.
Hi. We would include the town board. I'm under the assumption they are going to try and negotiate a fire.
Yes, okay.
We would also include the adjoining municipalities because you're within 500 feet.
That's true.
Of GNL. So it's Galloway, Greenfield, and Providence. However, in past practices, they have not replied to those about the agreement and courtesy and the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
Well, I do want to make the board aware of the fact that we have coordinated this project with OPRHP, with the State Historic Preservation Office. There is a letter of no effect for this project, and so if you're going to coordinate with them, Mr. Bianchi, then we can perhaps if you want to send me the lead agency designation letters, I can upload those directly to the Chris submittal that we have, or I can add you as a contact to the Chris submittal so that you can upload those directly. Even though, like I said, the coordination is complete, they have no concerns, but obviously they still would be an interested agency under seeker, and you know, we can handle that coordination either way you'd like.
Yeah, no, Brian, when I'll do my letter, I will give you a PDF so you can just upload this stuff.
Excellent. All right, with that, I have a motion proposed. Everybody fine? Good? Do you have a second?
Those motions.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, John Little. Any discussion? If not, Tina, will you call the board?
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes?
Ms. Van Danza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Joel, do you want to give us your technical comments you wanted to go through?
Yeah, really quick. So there was a couple questions we had in the site plans. What they presented was, in my mind, really illustrative for the board to, you know, obviously examine the project, you know, sufficient in my mind to initiate a coordinated review. There are items that we are requesting. We did provide the applicant's consultant with an example set. We used active soils, I think, Sodium Road as an example. Admittedly, the Sodium Road was more complex in that there was grading, but there were still elements that I think are important for us to review and the board to review. I.e., is there any tree clearing? Are you doing improvements to the roads? If you are, try to attempt to show them, provide construction details for those, provide details for the fencing and the gates. Also, if there's any visual mitigation, as an example in their plan, they provided a sample landscape buffer, but we would like to see where that goes, what type of species of trees, what is the height of install. So I think the plans in general are good enough for the board to look at, but I think we would expect and anticipate a little bit more detailed plan or plans that illustrate a complete project.
Brad Davis or Brian Meyer, do you, or anybody have any response to the engineer's comments?
Yes, Brad Davis. Yeah, we did receive Mr. Bianchi's comments yesterday, and we had looked through them and received the previous set. I don't think at this time we have any formal set of responses in the coming days. So I would suggest, and then copy and forward those comments and then response. But as of right now, I understand the direction the town setting is. That's fine.
And I'll just add to that, we have been retained to prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and so that is also requested several times in the letter, and so we are working diligently to pull that together.
So Brian, when you do get to that, we obviously endorse using DEC's tags relative to solar farms. You know, we recognize there are relaxed standards. We would encourage using DEC's Forest Hall Road, you know, to really try to limit your impervious footprint. So I think we've reviewed enough of these, both in Milton and other jurisdictions, so I think there are several reliefs granted through the design manual, so you can try to limit or avoid using any permanent stormwater practices.
Yeah, as you're well aware, this is a landfill facility, you know, the ability to grade and you know, put in, you know, ENS controls is limited, it's difficult. This is, we've done a few of them, and so not the first time we've done this. I think that, we'll definitely have some of our civil team, reach out to you as this thing progresses, to discuss this, from a technical standpoint.
Sure.
So, 100% understood.
Okay.
So the only other thing I'd offer is that we will have our lead agency determination status completed in advance of our May 19th meeting. We will probably have the county referral.
Yes.
Can we get this off?
You already do, don't you?
Oh, yeah, we do have the county referral, sorry.
No problem.
So, do you feel that you can get us all the documentation and technical requirements that Joel's outlined in the memo by May 5th, which is 2 weeks, it's the submission date 2 weeks prior to our May 19th board meeting, in which case I would consider a motion to set a public hearing for May 19th on this. That's all assuming everything clicks along really well. I would probably condition that if we don't have the complete application as deemed by our engineer and planning department, we will postpone that public hearing, because we don't have to get the notice out until after that May 5th date, correct, Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, the notice usually goes 10
Sorry
days.
about that.
10 days.
The town of Milton town code has a little quirk. Usually it's 5 days, but the town of Milton code says it's 5 business days.
So, but
So
then
we
we have,
have to stay true to that submission date of May 5th, because generally we publish in advance and we publish timely.
okay. So, I don't know, Brian and Brad, do you think you can get this all together by May 5th? Or would you just rather wait, do another presentation on the 5th with a complete application, get any questions, and then we'll schedule a hearing for June?
I think Brian and I are both looking at each other. Are you gonna have your stuff done, or am I gonna have my stuff done?
I mean, it's up to you.
Brian has the longer lead items, and I think from the engineering side, in terms of some of the site plan updates and good in there, as Mr. Bianchi mentioned, I think that our side can do it, but I don't know if the stormwater CS can happen that quickly.
We are moving forward with the stormwater plan. It usually takes our guys a couple weeks to pull these things together. I think that that is doable. I do. I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, the need for, visual, simulations that are included in here. Would you like to see those on the May 5th submission as well? And perhaps we can talk about the anticipation of deliverables there.
Sure. Joel, do you want to address that in a little more detail?
I apologize, I didn't hear that full question. Sorry.
Okay, so go ahead, Brian.
The visual, assessment, I know that you'd like to get a handle on, what this thing is going to look like from a visual standpoint. We were looking at this a little bit the last couple of days. It's really not visible from adjacent roadways, up around Google Earth, and it's heavily forested around there. Obviously, I don't live in the town. You guys know this area better than I do. I don't know what your thought is as to what you would like to see from a visual impact assessment standpoint.
Well, I think, I think the board, and, as an example, is the prior application, the board, has been routinely making a site visit to sort of get get a real perspective of what the site is relative to public use sheds or homes via site visit, and then we sort of work through how we do any visual mitigation if it's warranted. I think the way we can handle that is, and I would defer to the chair, is, if you schedule a site visit in the next couple of weeks and you don't have a visual simulation, in by the deadline, but you get it in and present it to the board and you sort of walk through that stuff, I think we can easily craft something the night of the public hearing, if the board is inclined to entertain a seeker determination. The bottom line is, I don't think on this project, like you said, it's not heavily viewed from the public right away. The glare would be to the south toward Route 29, where there's a pretty robust tree stand. So I think we can manage this, within the confines of the regulations, but maybe not hold you to a visual simulation that is formally submitted, because the board may not be able to get out there in time in order to do that. So I think we can work with you on that.
Brad, I don't see anything that's, I don't think is completely out of the possibility to have submitted by then. What's your thought, Brad?
I agree with you. I agree with you, Brian. We'd like to push this forward, and if we can schedule beyond the May 19th public hearing, that would be fantastic. We'll do everything we can to make sure the documents are coming in.
Okay. So with that, I'd entertain a motion sorry about that. To conduct a public hearing on the Ostro Rensola special use permit and site plan review for 7:10 p.m. on May 19th, 2021, with the condition that the application be as complete as possible by May 5th, the submission deadline. And we will attempt to see if we can't get the board that's interested out for a site visit in advance of that, or sometime with that. Maybe some of the visual stuff could wait an extra week or so, just because you wouldn't have the same amount of time for the luxury of our comments from that site visit. But with that, you could also eventually say, you know what, we just can't make the May 5th deadline, and we won't publish a notice for the hearing. So with that, can I have a motion for that?
Why would the application not be complete?
The reason I was saying is that if we don't get a site visit in time, that they can respond. It's only, May 5th is only a couple weeks away. That we would push off and say, well, bring this, if they think they get the visuals to us by the public hearing, bring the visuals to us at that point. We can always keep the hearing open too.
But the application will be complete.
Oh, yeah, the application will be complete. It'll just be, there might be some outstanding questions.
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
John Whittle. Any discussion or questions anybody have? There will be no discussion. Tina, pull the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Danza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Bartow?
Yes. So stay in touch. You have questions, feel free to reach out to Joel, Bill Lewis, or myself. We'll do what we can to help you out and help you try to meet your deadlines.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick request on that one, though. I think I'd benefit more from an in-person presentation, or something like to see some interaction with the presenters and the site plan. I think it'd be more helpful for me.
Okay. Did you guys get that? Is it all possible? Mr. Marsicano indicated that he felt an in-person presentation would be better when we get to the details of the question.
Yeah, CNS can certainly be there. My friend Brad is still unable to hop across the board. Brad, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I'm in Canada and you Americans don't want me there.
Yes. I believe that goes both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then I know Canada just did extend and the U.S., the border closure for an additional month. So, okay, that done, let's move to our next project. Sorry for the length of time in getting to this, but before us is a referral from the town board for an advisory recommendation for the adoption of a planned development district for a mixed residential subdivision at 272 Stone Church Road. The applicant is proposing a zoning amendment to facilitate the construction of a mixed-use residential subdivision that will be comprised of both single-family and detached homes, single-family homes, and a community dog park and walking trails. Before we commence with the review, I want to disclose that I have a relative who owns property adjacent to this lot. I believe it will not be biased in any way, that I will not be biased in any way, and that I can properly and fairly perform my duties despite that. I also, under the advice of counsel, there is no perceived or actual conflict of interest that they see. So does anybody have any particular objection to me continuing to participate as the chair on this project? Anybody develop from the applicant?
I would say we're going to be good with that.
Okay. Okay, I just want to put that out there for all quick disclosure. And then pursuant to seeker, the town board will be serving as lead agency. In addition, at this stage, our recommendation to the town board is only advisory, so we can continue the review of this project and make a recommendation. At this stage, our review of the proposed PDD will generally follow the procedure outlined in Chapter 154, Subdivision of Land, for the preliminary plat review of a major subdivision. We're also directed to additionally consider, among other factors, the following: the need for proposed land uses or uses at the proposed location, the existing character of the neighborhood in which the use or uses would be located, the location of principal and accessory buildings on the site in relation to one another, pedestrian circulation and open space configuration in relation to structures, the traffic circulation features within the site and amount, location and access to vehicle parking areas, location in relation to the stream corridor overlay district, steep slopes, wetlands in particular on this site, and flood zones, the availability of adequate water and provision for sewage disposal on the site, erosion control and stormwater management, maintenance, safety, impact on neighbors and aesthetics, compatibility of the proposal to the town's comprehensive plan, the town's center master plan, which is not relevant, and other aspects of our zoning. We may recommend at this stage such changes in the proposed plan development district that we deem necessary to protect the established or permitted uses in the vicinity, that promote and protect the orderly growth and sound development of the town, and otherwise meet requirements of our zoning law. We will then recommend approval with modifications, or disapproval to the town board of such plan development district application, and shall report our findings to the town board within 62 days following the date of referral from the board. Mr. Kennery and I did confer and discuss this. If the town board's referral to us was on March 24th, so we must make our recommendation by May 26th, meaning that we must develop our recommendations no later than our May 19th board meeting, which will be day 56 in the time clock that is there. Should the plan development district be approved by the town board, application needs to be made back to us within 180 days for approval of all or some portion of the intended development. And once again, we'll look at that with respect to Chapter 154, the subdivision of land, and the standards in our site plan review and approval procedure within our zoning. So we're going to get to see this project a lot over the next several months probably. Lots of opportunity to have input and comment on it. We'll at least get that input as expeditiously as we can. And Mr. Danable is here with us to present the project. You have, I'm going to do a brief overview. I've seen it a couple times, but nobody else has.
So, good evening. Once again, for the record, I'm Joe Danable with the Environmental Design Partnership. I'm here on behalf of the Caesar Brothers Holdings in their application for a planned development district. Just briefly, Caesar Brothers and their family have owned this property as long as probably anybody sitting in this room, and then maybe beyond that. They're all older gentlemen at this point in time looking to develop the property, sell it, and move on with the rest of their life. So the project itself is located on Stone Church Road, about half mile, 3/4 of a mile north of Geyser Road, just north of the Eagles Nest subdivision, also just to the west of Saratoga County Airport. Property is 83 acres, which is bisected in a north-south direction by Stone Church Road. We have 26 acres on the east side and 53 acres on the west side. Just focus. Keep moving away from it.
There's no panel, no public listening outside, so.
It must mean everybody loves it.
Yeah.
The project itself has 12 acres of constrained land, both DEC and Army Corps wetlands. That leaves about 71 acres of buildable land. Within the R1 zoning district, the minimum lot area is 1/2 acre. Simple mathematics gives us a base density of around 140 units. Given some other factors, configuration of the wetlands, configuration of future public roads, you're probably looking at a density anywhere of about 100 to 140 units under an allowable R1 single family or conventional subdivision. We do have a couple different layouts for a conventional subdivision. This is the first layout. First layout basically just taking into account overall land use, not respecting any of the wetlands, what we can fit on the property. Looking at about 112, 113 units on this layout. When we look at a conventional layout that respects the wetland, we're looking at a subdivision of about 80 to 90 units. One of the things that I'd like to point out about this conventional layout, we're looking at about 4,000 to 5,000 linear feet of new public road, 1/2 acre or so of wetland disturbance, no preservation of open space, conventional standard single-family lots, typical of what you see throughout the rest of Milton. Again, we looked at the site at this point, we looked at it with the brothers, and we said maybe we can come up with something a little different in the town of Milton that they don't currently have, different type of housing product, maybe something that's a little more in tune with the, I don't want to say affordable housing unit, but possibly getting into some townhouse types of units allows for a potentially lower income house and less valuable house, if you will. So, I'm using my terms wrong here, I should have wrote it down better. A different housing product to get different types of demographics into the area, keeping some people in the area, not providing the standard $400,000 to $500,000 single-family house in the area. What we came up with is a essentially a cluster subdivision, which is permissible in many municipalities and very similar to what is proposed or allowed without in the R2 zones in the further western reaches of the town of Milton, where you take an overall land area, develop a density computation, take those units that you're allowed by your density, cluster them down into a smaller area. What that does, it significantly reduces the amount of road length. We're now looking at 2,000 to 3,000 linear feet of road. We're creating 55 acres of undisturbed, permanently protected open space. We're providing amenities such as a trail and a community dog park. We have significantly less disturbance, a much more tightened and reserved environmental footprint on the property. Again, looking at this layout compared to the conventional layout, which eats up all the land. No wetland disturbance. And another important factor is we took into consideration the existing neighborhoods that surround the property. Along the southern border, we have the Eagles Nest subdivision where there are 8 existing single-family residents. To the north, I believe this is Ackland Road. There are 8 residents immediately adjacent to the property. In our conventional subdivision, we essentially develop the rear yards of every one of the existing homes on Eagles Nest and every home on the upper portion of the site to the north. What we did with our cluster subdivision, or the PDD we're proposing, is we pulled all the residential units away from the adjacent lots. We are now only developed and adjacent to 3 lots, one of which is already pulled significantly further away from that rear property line. Up on the north end, we're now only impacting 3 lots and developing adjacent to them. So what we tried to do is cluster, pull this in, reduce all our environmental impacts, reduce our footprint, essentially proposing a cluster development that is allowed in the western part of town and many of the other municipalities with standard residential zoning. However, the only way to move this type of design forward in the town of Milton is through the PDD process. So that's why we're here tonight. For utilities, we're going to be connecting to sewer supplied by Heritage Springs Sewer Works. We're not sure if we're going to be extending the sewer north or south. Existing sewer is located here, as well as just south of the Eagles Nest subdivision. Rollins Hollow Waterworks has a water main along Stone Church Road. We would be tying into that. We do understand that they have ample supply of water, enough to service this project. Stormwater management would be provided on site for all of the new impervious areas. Again, we're here tonight looking for recommendations from the board and hopefully go back to the town board with a positive recommendation. I always think when I'm working with the PDD that this is a work in progress. We'd like to take the recommendations we hear from the board, make some amendments to the plan, and hopefully continue on a path towards approval and coming up with some different type of housing products within the town of Milton. Thank you. Any questions, comments you may have, I'll certainly look forward to what I can address now or possibly at the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Kennery, I just wanted, I know you and Mr. Craig and I have had some discussions on seeker, how this is going to happen. It's our initial recommendation that for now, the town board will likely need a seeker application. But in terms of getting the full scope of the project in here, what happens in the PDD process is we get this review for 62 days, we make a recommendation, then the town board gets it. They're going to actually do a zoning amendment in approving a PDD, but at that point they stop. And then the project, if the applicant continues to want to go forward, comes back to us for a review and approval pursuant to our subdivision regulations, so this would be a major subdivision review, as well as some procedures in site plan review. Will we have to initiate a second seeker review once we get that second level decision? I mean, the town board's done, it's made its decision. Do we have to go in and initiate seeker on our own again? Or have we been covered under the town board's original seeker review?
As it stands now, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that the intention is that the town board will do the seeker.
Okay.
And as I say, that is my understanding as it stands at this time. As you appreciate so well, the action here with the board is of an advisory nature only, so that is not subject to seeker. So the advisory opinion in this determination will be made by the planning board. The findings and any report will be transmitted to the town board, and it's my understanding that the town board is going to take a hard look at the entire project at the town board level. Certainly if that changes, I'll communicate that, but my understanding is that's the present plan.
So, would that,
So John,
go ahead, Joel.
John, I can also sort of add to what Mr. Kinley said is, in using past practices in the town, is just assuming, which I think will be the case, is the town board is the lead agency, they would undergo a coordinated review because this would be a type 1 action. The planning board would be an involved agency, and assuming the town board issues a negative declaration, and then as you described, the application comes back before this board for subdivision review, you as an involved agency would be bound by the findings of the lead agency. That's not to say you would not go back and confirm that the secret findings, the notice of non-significance, if there was any mitigation measures put in place to offset impacts, you as the technical board would be still tasked to make sure the final design implements whatever mitigation measures were put in place.
Okay.
So effectively reaffirming secret.
Okay, and then if we had to, we could always go into supplemental environmental review if there were some impacts or something that we found as we were technically getting into the subdivision.
If that came up, let's hope not. I do believe that that would be remanded back to the town board as the lead agency, but then I would rely on Mr. Terry on what those procedural aspects.
Yeah, no, it just seems awkward, and I wanted to clarify, so, okay. I'm good with that. Did that make sense to you all?
Yeah, yes, that's the standard procedures that I have seen is that once the town board makes the determination,
Yeah.
the planning board would reaffirm seeker.
Okay. Joel, you got any comments for the board at this time?
I have just, I'll speak to some comments, and just so the board is aware, is, we will provide a letter to the town board as we typically do on PDs that haven't been committed with them. And we try to incorporate any substantive comments that this board has in our report, although you as a board will probably do a separate report, but I try to be consistent. But some general comments that we had, first I'll categorize them as seeker because we will help the town board with their seeker evaluation, is their narrative indicated that they would do a traffic study at some point. Because traffic is a seeker topic, we would strongly recommend that, and this will go to the town board, that the traffic study be completed as part of the seeker evaluation. Another seeker item is, I know Mr. Daniel spoke to the capacity of the water and sewer service companies because they are both transportation corporations. I believe the town board would like to see some sort of correspondence from both transportation corporations indicating that they both have the ability, willingness to serve the project, and that the project is in the approved service area for both transportation corporations. On cultural resources, without the application in front of me this evening, I believe they already have a sign-off from Office of Parks, which is good, so we can put that secret topic to bed. And the only other secret topic I thought of was habitat. I know Milton's close to Greenfield, which was the documented Northern Island bat habitat. I don't know if they have reached out to New York Heritage relative to that, but if that does get, if the site does get tagged for that, we can always manage that through restrictions on cutting of trees, and so long as the applicants agree with that. So those are the secret topics that we thought about. Now, talking about PUD layout, and this touched on some of the stuff that you talked about, John, relative to what the board is tasked with. Falling back on the subdivision notice, section 154.19E talks about pedestrian facilities, whether the board thinks this would be a candidate for internal sidewalks, whether the multi-use trail that they're proposing is adequate, and whether there may be a desire to extend it north and south on the existing town road, or maybe offering easements or dedications for the extension by the town or some other party at a future date, so you have that as your plan. On dedication of open space, 154.19C3, maybe the board would like to comment on whether the open space that they're proposing to the HOA would suffice to satisfy that under subdivision law. Another thing is section 154.19B3. There is a provision on subdivisions containing more than 20 lots must have secondary connection. And where this would come into play on this application is on the western lot. They have a cul-de-sac that serves 20 lots. This board has dealt with this on the Mountain Street subdivision, where we basically fall back under the fire code and said the fire code allows up to 30 lots. And this board granted a waiver, but you may want to comment on that. And there's an opportunity to put up Stub Street to the vacant property to the north. You may want to comment on that. The other questions were they were proposing a 7.5-foot setback in their bulk lot standards. That would be fine. This is a really technical question. So long as there was no egress doors on those walls, because then that triggers fire code issues with 2-hour fire rating. The board may or may not have a comment on that. We saw that there was a community dog park, and when I hear community, I think that's open to the general public beyond the residents. Whether the board thought, if that was the case, that any public parking was necessary to allow the general public to come to that park. I know that they're close to the Saratoga County Airport, and I believe their plan shows the restricted flight path on the southwest, north, or southeast northwest runway flight line. I didn't know if any of that flight path had any restrictions on the height of houses, or whether the county may come in and clear trees that are otherwise set aside for open space. And then the last comment that I think the board should provide comments on is the project proposes both a combination of conventional single-family lots and then twin homes on a single-family lot. That twin home on a single-family lot is new to the town of Milton, I think. The board may want to consider or contemplate how that arrangement exists. Meaning, is that going to be owner-occupied? Are they going to be rental units? Or maybe the board has an opinion that each of those buildings is on its own lot. Because really, they have 90-plus units, but it's really, I think, a 54-lot subdivision. I don't know how much the board has an opinion on. Hey, why don't you just put each home on a lot where the shared firewall is in a common lot? Because I know other jurisdictions have had concerns with those becoming rental properties rather than having an owner-occupied unit for the renter next door. There's a notion that if you live there, you give more care to the facility. I've seen other jurisdictions discuss that with veterans. So John, that's really some of our verbal comments that will show up in our report to you.
Would you be able to give us some written comments for our meeting, our next meeting on this project? That might be starting to be the development of what you're ultimately responsible to get to the town board.
Sure.
That would be very helpful to us. There's something else I was going to add, and I just seemed to have forgotten about it. Oh, the other thing I want to do, Bill Lewis, are you still on the line? I am. Yeah. Can you be sure that this project gets referred to the Highway Department and the Recreation Department regarding the comments that Joel made? But in particular, the streets and layouts, any concerns they may have for maintenance, snow removal, or any of that. And if there's any consideration that we would even think of wanting any of those trails open to the public, which, you know, I know we discussed and talked at one point, would they be dedicated, would they not be dedicated? You know, that's still out there, but I'd like to hear from Rex and Parks Department as to what their thoughts on the project would be. So can you do that and make sure we get
John, one last thing I forgot to mention is we will talk to Dave Forrest because the application is proposing an HOA. We will quiz him as to whether he says, hey, I'll let the HOA take the stormwater basins up in the town or own personally also. I will bring that to the point.
Okay. So yeah, so Bill, can you just make sure that Dave and whoever are aware of it, referred it, and can get back to us before our next meeting?
The highway and also the front review.
Okay.
So, we will go over it, they did have some concerns, I put it away and we addressed it in the next meeting.
Sure.
So, on my comment, we'll pick on the screening, the, cul-de-sac, the expired road, screening against backland and present run, and public utilities, getting approval for public utilities. This is pretty much what I had. I was at the comments from highway with snow storage and maintenance of the roads and whatnot, but I will reach out to them and have put a formal letter together for.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and if they want to meet to discuss it, happy to do that as well. Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if you will, I missed actually a page of my notes with me to cover some of the
Oh, okay,
topics that were
okay.
discussed by Joel. When we are looking at the overall project, we're looking at a proposed PUD for 100 units, 2 estate lots, 6 standard single-family, 92, which we're calling single-family attached dwellings. These would be individually owned units with a common firewall. They are not to be owner-occupied and one side rented. They all are going to be individual ownership within the townhomes. Another aspect and a consideration for the board is we've had some builders look at this project. They may not be looking to change the layout, but they may be looking to separate some of these with a smaller space in between them to actually make them all individually small single-family lots, except not with a common firewall. So again, another consideration to add another even housing type to the mix, where we have some of the 2-family attached and some of the townhouses single-family attached or single-family detached units. Again, so we are open to discussions, and we do want to provide a mix of housing types because we think that's the best thing to introduce into the market. When we talk about some of the seeker items, certainly traffic, water, and sewer are all predicated on density. And if everybody looks at me and says, yep, we love 100 units, go to the next step, we'll do traffic studies, water studies, and sewer studies tomorrow. But before we take that step, we'd like to try and hone in on density a little tighter so that we know when we're having those studies done or being done on accurate numbers.
And then you notice Joel had talked about even if it was 2 lots for each of those dwellings, the common firewall could be considered a lot. Did you make that comment?
Correct, and that's typically how it would be done. You subdivide it as one lot. When you put the home on, you resurvey the lot, you get the actual location of that wall. That becomes the new lot line that gets filed in the county.
And I guess Bill would be doing that as a lot line adjustment at that point.
I believe typically that is just filing with the county. They are actually separate lots. If you notice, it's a great lot that is ultimately
Just
to
don't
be
have
subdivided into another lot that just gets filed in the county, and there's going to be 2 Joe Way and 3 Joe Way,
Okay.
2 and 4.
Okay. Does the board have any questions at this point, or concerns they want to make sure they address? Go ahead, man.
How close is this to the airport? I mean, I'm looking at the picture here, and it looks like it actually borders the airport.
Yes, this is the Saratoga County Airport property here with all the trees that are cleared right to the property line.
Okay. And how many feet back is the first duplex townhouse?
The first one's probably, looking at my map, we're probably about a 50-foot buffer of trees, and then we get into the actual lot, which is probably another 50 to 60 feet to the rear of the house.
100 feet from the monument.
Yep.
Is that the runway that comes down that way? Or, I'm looking at this picture, it looks like it's a runway there.
Yeah, so we do have a section of the property here that is within the runway protection zone. We have no units shown in there, however, we can use it for stormwater management because it's a non-occupied use.
Okay, that was my other question, is any of it in the picture? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Chairman, I have
Go
a
ahead,
comment
Pat.
if I could.
Go ahead, Pat.
And and I hate to prolong the meeting, I know it's getting late, but Mr. Bianchi made mention that this is not really common to our town, and I guess, in my own personal opinion, if we made reference to the Deer Run community with a townhouse type atmosphere, where it has separate property owners that are joined by a firewall, I see a distinct continuity of maintenance issue. There's a revolving door of ownership and occupancy, and there's a complete lack of consistency with maintenance and or repair of buildings with perspective, just in terms of general care, if not aesthetics. And I think that carries over if you look into the Luther's Forest development. As they time out on their first cycle of building materials, the owners then have complete free reign to either maintain or not, and there's no consistency of it. And it seems to me that that's a problem that needs to be addressed in that type of a situation, because as you become a property owner, it's your prerogative to do what you deem necessary or not. But with respect to the presence in the town, I think it represents a clear problem, because some of it represents a decay that neighbors are bound by being adjacent to. And I'm using just basic things from my perspective, looking at roofs, looking at siding, looking at driveway paving and maintenance in those communities, because there's no, and again, I'm not about governmental control, but without some type of regulatory maintenance of those adjoining ownerships, it seems as though it poses a problem. And you can simply drive around through those neighborhoods and witness it. And we're witnessing the first generation of the initial building materials failing, and now seeing that problematic maintenance issue. Single-family homes are single-family homes, but that townhouse structure where adjacent ownership and adjoining driveways, my personal opinion is that's problematic.
You know, just speaking to that, certainly there are communities with townhouses that have maintenance issues. I know Deer Run is well, I guess we'll say well known within the town. I think they certainly are much more than just 2 units attached. I think there's 4, 6, and possibly even 8 units combined through there. I'd like to also say that I can take you on a tour of Saratoga County of multiple communities, more communities that are successful, well-maintained, look wonderful, have great aesthetic value, with this type of 2-unit townhouse style, as opposed to the very few that have a failed agenda, or a failed build-out, and failed maintenance within the community. I think this type of housing unit is very desirable for the senior or empty nester type of a market. So people looking to downsize into some of the smaller single-family housing. So I do think that certainly within Saratoga County, this type of housing unit is extremely desirable, and I know many builders in the area are seeking this type of unit to be able to build. That being said, we are not opposed to mixing some of these units, separating some of the townhouses into 2 single-family detached units, but also leaving some of them as single-family attached units. I think using the word single-family attached unit is something that should certainly be used more often, as opposed to the townhouses can definitely have a negative connotation sometimes when you get talking about those maintenance issues.
And there can be ways that a homeowners association can control this.
Yes.
I don't know if you're planning to do something of that nature, but that could be something to help address the maintenance issue.
Certainly, we're proposing an HOA. I'm not sure how in-depth that HOA will be. Certainly as you get more and more involved in HOA, the filing procedures for the Attorney General's office can become, I'm dealing with one right now, and I have a meeting every 3 days on it, and it's consuming my life at this point, being in 2 attorneys. It's a lot of minute details involved in that.
Yeah, I'm not red flagging it, I think my own personal opinion, and I think I'm being a member of this board, I at least had to verbalize my concerns.
Absolutely, I think that's a very appropriate and good points to point out. Anybody else have any comments at this point?
Just a quick comment. Do you plan,
Go ahead, John. Oh,
I thought I heard somebody else speaking.
Jim was ahead, so let's go with Jim first.
just a quick comment, do you plan on providing floor plans and elevation views and like the garages and those kind of details?
We can certainly get to that point. We don't have a builder on board. I know some of the builders that are looking at this project are some of the more reputable and respected builders in Saratoga County. Certainly none of them are going to put forth their elevations until they have a contract or know the project's going forward.
Okay. John, you have
Yep, yes, sir. I would like to come back, Mr. Chairman, to a couple of things. On the runway exclusion zone, where it's shown on the back portion of the property and with the property lines, wouldn't that be a prohibited area to show, and wouldn't you have to have your setback off of the runway exclusion zone? Because it's excluded property from building on. If you guys could look at that, maybe, and maybe you didn't hear me, maybe you did.
Nope, he heard you.
Yeah, we can look at that. My understanding of the one-rate protection zone is that it can be improved, but it can't be improved with occupied space, such as any portion of a building cannot be within that zone. But we can certainly look at that detail and make sure that we are interpreting it right and the town's interpreting it right.
Just re-refresh yourself with 180. I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Just re-refresh yourself with 180, 28.1. When I'm looking at it's kind of saying that no use, building, or structure shall be permitted or constructed within the runway protection zone except accessory activities such as off-street parking, landscaping, and so forth, right? So I think we just ought to take a look at that and see if we're in compliance. Also, when we do the PDD, nominally I've seen in the past where we have a sample of what the legislation might be. In this case, we didn't do that. And what I'd like to hope the board considers is that as part of that legislation, we include the specific language of the special use permit for the type of projects that they're putting in. A two-family home in an R1 would require a special use permit. So as part of this PDD, they should include that. They should include the site plan review aspects in the PDD. They should also include, since the runway protection zone is in there, those sections of the code should be included in the PDD that are applicable. In addition, there should be something about the water and sewer in there. Additionally, on the water and sewer, where is your second sewer location? Isn't that down by Eagle Mills?
Eagles Nest, you mean?
Eagles Nest, excuse me, Eagles Nest, thank you for the correction.
You're a long way to Eagle Mills.
Yeah,
The
sorry, yeah.
southern sewer is at, I'm not sure the name of the subdivision, is the one that Vivento is constructing?
Yeah. It's a little bit further south than Eagles Nest.
Yep. Is there a reason we don't want to just connect the two? If we're going to put in a project this big?
For sewer, there's typically no need to connect the gravity systems or the force main. Sewer generally flows in one direction. It's typically the water that would be looped.
Did you hear that, John?
It does, I did hear that, but it does provide you a degree of an ability if something happens, right? It's connecting to the same system.
Yeah, we can look at it, but I can think of no engineering benefit to connect this to two different directions of flow for the sewer.
Yeah, John, Wood, I would agree with Joe. It would be an unusual circumstance to require a looping or multiple connections for a sanitary sewer system, unlike water where you want to loop it.
Yeah, I'm just, because it would give some of those other folks the ability to connect in.
John, one of your comments relative to the SUV, the applicant is free to propose as part of the draft legislation to propose those as special use permits or not. Because they're effectively writing a zoning code for this property. And they can propose how they want to legislate it. This board can obviously say, you don't want to do this as a special use permit, or us as an advisory board thinks it should be a special use permit. So it's a very good point that the applicant can obviously propose certain elements that they would propose.
Thank you, Joel. That's why I mentioned it here as an advisory board. We should encourage the town board to ensure that we cover those applicable sections of the code in the PDD.
Absolutely.
And just speaking to that, we're not proposing two-family dwellings. We're proposing single-family attached dwellings. Certainly that's a different use. A two-family dwelling would be a dwelling with 2 units, owner living on one side, the other side is renting, which I believe this board and the town does not want to see.
Did you get that, John?
I did get that. We're still under evaluation though as to what the final result is.
Yep, we got a lot to look at here, and decent amount of time to look at it. Any other questions from the board at this time? Okay, so you got some.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just have one quick practical point. I don't know if the board typically does this. Would you reach out in connection with your advisory opinion with respect to fire services and EMS at this point in time?
Yeah, I guess we could. We lost Bill, so Tina, can you be sure to put a note for him to reach out to fire and EMS?
Yes, I will.
And then you can put that in there. Thank you, Bill. It's a good observation.
So I guess I'm going to ask the board, I have no problem doing, working with the EMS, working with the sewer, working with the water departments, the highway department. I think one of the things I'd like to, hear from this board before we get into that level of detail is what we're looking at today is what is being proposed. If, in the board's opinion, is what we're looking at something that they can get behind, or is it something they have concerns with the way it is set up right now and they'd like to see changes to this? I hate to go to the fire department, they ask for a change, we make the change, and then we come back to this board and like, man, we still don't like it, let's make another change to it, then we're back to the fire department and we end up going back and forth multiple times. I guess my consideration up front is I want to get as much information, as many comments as possible out on the table so that when we do start going to these other agencies and other entities within the town, we have kind of a more solidified plan that everybody's starting to get excited about.
So I think at this stage, we're saying that we want to reach out to them and get input so that we can then in turn, in addition to what opinions we might have about the layout and concept and design, we want to have their input to help reflect and shape our ultimate recommendation. So I guess, at least initially, we're not asking you, we're going to say, we'll do that first round of reach out and try to hear their thoughts and concerns or approvals or whatever. And then hopefully by next month, we can be with you to say, all right, this is what we've heard, this is what the changes that we think we need to incorporate in the plan. The challenge is we're in a tight 62-day timeframe in terms of getting to a recommendation. I think that's still going to be somewhat at a conceptual level. You know, like you pointed out, I can't yet tell you exactly what the building elevations and profiles are all going to be because I don't have that input from the new development. It's totally legitimate. So I think that's what we're going to be dancing with, because really this referral stage that we're at is I would agree with you, it's more conceptual at this stage than in the detail. And then when we get, if the town board ultimately does approve, we go to the next review, I mean, then we're in the weeds on some of this stuff. But you're right, the overall density concept and everything has been approved in law. So we've got to look at that. And that's where I think John Whittle was pointing out, let's make sure that that draft law and that law ultimately has a lot of input. And have you started drafting the law at all?
Again, that typically wouldn't happen until we're back in front of the town board. Draft legislation, it can't be developed at this point in time because I don't know where we're going to end up with the layout, the number of units, roads, sidewalks, trails, sewer, water. There's tons of details that need to be worked out, and I need input from this board and their recommendations to the town board, and the town board is going to have additional concerns and want to include stuff into the legislation. So we're really nowhere near that. We're really at a first blush look that basically says, do we like what we see in front of us? Do we want to see this thing move forward, or does anyone have an opinion that no, this is absolutely not what we want to see in the town? And we could certainly stall a project and slow it down that way. That's kind of where I feel like we're at in this process. Is it something we like and want to continue to review, or is it something that even if we get all these comments back and the fire department loves it, the highway department loves it, and they come back here and everyone's like, we still don't like it. That's kind of where I'm sitting or standing from right now. I'm sure my clients want to know that information, as early on as possible.
And in addition, there's not going to be a lot of public input until the town puts a local law to a public hearing. Correct. So there's no public. I know in our conversations conceptually prior to this, we've been wondering what will the surrounding property owners have in terms of thoughts on this. What will, particularly the neighboring developments have here? How do they feel? We don't have that yet. I mean, if this is on the agenda, it's posted and notice that it's going to be reviewed here, but obviously I don't think anybody from the adjoining neighborhoods is here this evening, and certainly not participating in Zoom. We could attempt to reach out if that's something you find earlier on in this stage, but outside of our normal what was submitted.
Right. And again, we're here for recommendations, really looking for recommendations. Does this board kind of think they like what they see, or how much more do they want to change? That's really what I see as the purpose of this initial meeting.
I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts that they want to convey at this time? Go ahead, Ben.
You said something about separating some of the units and homes, right?
Correct. Essentially keeping the same individual unit footprint and separating them to now have just narrower lots. So rather than having a common party wall, you actually have a single-family detached dwelling with a very small side yard.
And under the building code, what would that side yard have to be? Isn't it a minimum of 20 feet?
I think it could be even as little as like 5 feet.
So I thought you had to be able to get a fire apparatus.
You have to be able to, you don't have to get fire apparatus between single family. That's for commercial buildings with that are over a certain distance, getting fire apparatus access to two sides of the building. Okay. I can get information on that. I don't know the exact separation. I think it's as little as 5 feet of appropriate building material side. We wouldn't be proposing it that close. We might be going 10 feet. But certainly
not 25 feet.
Right. And again, that's just
because the lot's not big enough.
Then I can bring you and I can provide information on where these communities with these smaller single-family detached units and the mix of the attached units are built and they're established and how well they look. And that's what we're trying to mimic. And I can certainly go take some pictures and provide pictures of what we think this community is going to look like. Ultimately, architecture is going to be up to the individual builder and the people that are buying these homes. You're buying a home and they can be a custom built home to whatever 6 or 7 different floor plans that the builder themselves may have that fit into this envelope.
Any additional? Nancy, go ahead.
If they wanted more stronger comments then I would say, because of the size of the lot's only 12,000 square feet, having it in the runway protection zone sets that owner up for problems. If the airport district comes in and says, I'm gonna cut all that down, there's nothing they can do. If they put stuff there, then they're gonna have to fight them like the people with the trees and so forth. I don't think we should set up a development that's gonna put people in that particular situation.
I agree with that.
That's a great comment, and we can certainly look at making sure none of the privately owned properties are within the bounds of the protection zone.
Anybody else? Nancy, did you have something?
I mean, do you know at this point, like, the sizes of the, like, what's the square footage of the single-family homes as opposed to the townhomes, whatever you want to call them?
The footprint we're generally looking at for the attached home is 1/2 of that attached home is going to be 24 to 30 feet wide and 48 to 60 feet deep. So your first floor plan, including your garage, is going to be somewhere around 1,500 to 1,800 square feet. So you're probably a 2,000, 2,200 square foot home.
There are 2 stories you're thinking?
Some will be 2 stories, some may be 1 story. We certainly want to include first floor master bedrooms in all of these units. That seems to be the hottest item that everybody wants to see, and that's certainly a market we would like to entice. Again, we're looking to market this towards empty nesters and seniors.
And then detached single-family homes on the western side, we're looking at 35,000 square feet.
35,000 would be pretty big.
No, 3 to 5. 3 to 5.
Yeah, your typical single-family homes that you see in a lot of the communities in town. And then a couple large estate lots set up out in the back. That's something the current owner of the property wants to retain one of them for their family to come up here, as they do like to come up every summer.
Any other comments for now? Okay.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I hope you've gotten enough to keep going. See you.
It certainly, as these conversations with these other departments come in, provide me with those comments.
Absolutely.
I can certainly continue to update these, and as I come back for the May meeting, there may be some revisions to this plan that we can present to the board and have some more conversation.
Yep, fair enough.
Thank you.
And if you have questions and want to do a meeting or meet with any of those other entities, let us know, and we'll make sure that happens.
Perfect.
All right, thanks, Joe, appreciate it. Any other business to be brought before the board at this time? Okay, there being no other business this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll make that motion. Second?
I'll second.
All those that are in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate all the time and effort. I'm sorry for the lateness of the meeting.